Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. This is David McGuire with Shark Stewards and my friend. This is the Live Like a Shark Ocean Action Series, episode 10. So happy World Oceans Week. We're at the end of a great week of celebration, both here in the United States and California, but in Asia as well. We've been working in Malaysia and Singapore in the middle of the night with Blue Hope and ADEX-Asia, sponsored by Pixel, showing films, having discussions, launching a new Hope spot with Dr. Sylvia Earle in the Association of Tourism Management and USAID in Timor Leste with our partners, which I'll try to name them all, but you can't name all your partners because hopefully you're one of them and they're limitless, because we're all here together to save the ocean and him and them. So I want to thank my technical staff, Gretchen. We have had a challenge getting on this morning, so apologize for being a little bit late. I'm not sure if our Blue Hope film showed, so we're going to start with that again, because this is a celebration of the ocean. It's a celebration of marine protected areas. It's a celebration of ocean life. So we're going to start out with a film that we produced with Sylvia Earle and Timor Blue. It's called Blue Hope, although it's not open. Hang on. And this is about the new Hope spot in Timor Leste, an island nation at the bottom of the Coral Triangle, but not at the bottom of the food chain, because it has amazing life, incredible people working to protect this, the most biodiverse place on the planet. So I'm going to go back and share screen. I hope you enjoy the film. We'll tune back in when I've got my deck together, and we're all going to live like a shark together. So here is the film with Dr. Earle.
I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an ocean explorer, a scientist, and founder of Mission Blue. I want to salute you for what you are doing in Timor Leste, for celebrating your ocean, taking care of your ocean, and sharing it with people from all over the world. With hundreds of blue whales swimming past Dili every year, families of sperm whales and many different species of dolphins so close to shore, and dugongs just 5 minutes away from the international airport, you have the most extraordinary and precious blue world in your hands. Truly incredible. Thank you for what you're doing. Tourism actually serves as a powerful education, causing people to be aware of why they matter, why the ocean matters. Timor-Leste is, of course, also blessed with tremendous oil and gas reserves. And while there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that your whales, dolphins, and dugongs are much more precious, their combined value must be realized and shared across all the different marine stakeholders through proper ecotourism as quickly as possible. So, while you have some really big challenges ahead, by working very closely together through ATM-TL with multiple stakeholder collaboration and planning, with your combined strength and unity, Timor-Leste's blue world will surely stand out above the rest and get proper protection that it really needs and deserves. I want to assure you that you have mine and Mission Blue's full support, and I very much hope to experience Timor-Leste's amazing blue wonderland myself soon. You truly are reason for hope. Thank you.
And that was actually became a reality. So thank you, Dr. Sylvia Earle, my hero, and the Mission Blue team. And I especially want to thank Shannon the Shark, my handler, her handler, and our facilitator with Dr. Karen Edivan of the Association of Tourism Management in Timor Leste, as well as all the stakeholders, the dive operators, the NGOs, the government, including His Honor Jose Ramos Horta, who is a president, former president and prime minister, and a big ocean champion, as well as a champion for ocean tourism and ecotourism. We'd hope to bring many of you down, including scientists, to support conservation as well as the local economy. COVID, unfortunately, has affected us all, including our friends in Timor-Leste, and we're very concerned about our dive operators and whale watch friends who really need the economic input from tourists, and so do the sharks, the reefs, and the whales. So we're hoping that everything is just kind of in stasis, that there's no more fishing, there's no more poaching from outside, that we can continue to protect this and also support our local partners in this incredible hope spot. And as Dr. Earle says, continue working to protect it permanently. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Coral Triangle. We've been discussing that on ADEX Live in Singapore and Malaysia in the middle of the night. So not a lot of sleep this week. And we were a little late today because we're actually reporting from the field. So this is episode 10. We're now down in Southern California. We've actually gotten out of the apartment in San Francisco. We're still wearing our masks. That wasn't very good. We're still wearing our masks. We're living like a shark. We're swimming at a distance, keeping our hands clean, and always smiling. Need a better light source there. So please continue to be safe. The crisis is still continuing. Be healthy, and the sooner we can all get out there in the ocean and on the ocean with our partners, supporting dive tourism, supporting science, and supporting marine protection, the better we will be health for ourselves, but also for the health of our planet. So today we're going to talk about marine protected areas on a larger scale, more international scale. Next week, we'll talk about MPAs, or marine protected areas, on a more local scale here in California with our network of marine protected areas under the Marine Life Protection Act. So these MPAs have been an establishment here, well, for 30 or 40 years in California, but really since 1999. And I am fortunate enough, to be part of this network of collaboratives working to educate and facilitate marine protection in our coastline, which has been established under the MLPA, and now it's 16% of our coastal resources are established under this system, including many no-take reserves. Thank you, new light. Get some light on the subject. So I want to talk about marine protection and why we protect the ocean. So I'm going to share our deck again. We're going to go to a mini PowerPoint. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll try to address these. I hope you're still tuning in to our Ocean Action Live, Live Like a Shark Live. Not a webinar, not boring, exciting, because we are excited about ocean protection and getting in the water now that things have opened up a little bit. And we're actually going to be doing some diving. Thanks, Patagonia, for the new wetsuit, to free dive some of our marine protected areas and share a little bit of that video with you next week to show how incredible these temperate marine ecosystems are in California. So welcome, I'm David McGuire. We're Shark Stewards. We are a nonprofit project of the Earth Island Institute based in Berkeley. We are an international organization. We work here all the way across the Pacific in Singapore, Malaysia, and now Timor-Leste, trying to advocate, educate, and work towards conservation to protect sharks from overfishing and the shark fin trade, but as well as establishing and protecting critical marine habitat under these MPAs. So we apply education we work with our local partners and networks and governments to try to protect these species and habitat permanently so we can all enjoy them. So what do marine protected areas protect anyway? Well, they protect habitat, whether it's coral reef or kelp forest or rocky reef or sandy habitat, to maintain biological diversity, to protect areas from over-extraction, overfishing, which the world has done a pretty good job of doing a lot of damage to our fish stocks, and also to protect cultural heritage, so cultural values of areas from here all the way across the world, including now a new proposed National Marine Sanctuary, which would be our 14th, the one off of that would connect the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary to the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary at the Big Sur coastline, which largely would protect it for our cultural heritage, for our Native Americans of the Chumash Nation here off the California coast. So if you want to learn more about that, go to our website. We're supporting that, and you can comment to NOAA to support this next National Marine Sanctuary. There are different levels of protection. Some protect completely from fishing, some don't. So there are mixed levels in marine protected areas, and sometimes an MPA is actually kind of a misnomer. In the extreme cases, it's actually what's called a paper park, or worth about the paper it's written on. But it's well-intentioned. Ideally, we start with laws, or we start with movements, we start with hope. We lay down the gauntlet that we want to protect it, and then we start to fight for those protections and to enforce them, and ideally build relationships and strengthen them and work together to protect these ocean resources in perpetuity. Let's get rid of the egos, let's get rid of the combativeness, let's get rid of the selfishness for short-term economic gain, so that we can all work together for ecological as well as economic gain in the long run through ecotourism. So that's what a lot of these hope spots are about, or some of the marine protected areas. And these actually benefit economic resources in the long run, not only through fishing outside the marine protected areas, but also diving or kayaking or whale watching inside the protected areas. So there is a goal. We're celebrating the Love 3030 campaign that was launched under the Convention of Biological Diversity in 2020 to establish 10% of our world oceans, or 30% of our world oceans by 2030. It was 10%, and we're not even there yet. So we have a long way to go, and we have a lot of fight to protect the ocean areas that we have protected. Because right now, globally, according to the Marine Conservation Institute, Marine Life, or the Marine Protected Atlas, we only have about 5.3%, around 6% that are truly protected, meaning they're enacted, they're enforced, they've got some science behind them. We've got governments or patrol boats, they're actually being protected. We have a long way to go. Our land is around 15% protected, and we could do a lot better job on the land too. But we tend to protect what we see or what we know or what we love. So let's get our heads under the water and in the water and protect these areas. So the definitions range internationally, nationally, and locally. Sometimes a protected area is cultural, and they're called locally marine managed areas, which is an incredible start, and it's actually a historical marine protection. Many cultures from Hawaii, French Polynesia, the Tahitians, Samoans, Tongans had this Rahui, this marine protected area that had a taboo, where the word comes from, which is forbidden. You cannot enter. And they would set aside these areas outside the reef and inside the reef from fishing for a set period of time. And that is a local managed area. And they're effective on a small scale. And actually on a large scale, I'm hoping, or we're hoping, if you work with the cultural leaders, you're going to have success on the other side, the more scientific or governmental level. And in some cases, it's the only way we're going to protect our oceans, are through local champions. So there are different varieties. This one is under the International Union for Conservation of Nature by Dudley, who actually does a lot of study on sharks and listing sharks. But it talks about a clearly defined geographical space, meaning latitudes and longitudes. And it's recognized, dedicated, and managed through legal or other means, locally perhaps, to achieve long-term conservation of not only the natural, but also the cultural and the ecosystem services in an area of the ocean. They're defined differently on our national level, and they vary by different levels of regulation. For example, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, which administers our national marine sanctuaries, has different definitions than our California state MPAs, which we'll talk about, which are actually very, very tightly defined and more clearly defined, and we hope more clearly understandable by fishermen and the public. So there's not a mistake of people going into these areas that don't always have buoys. They certainly don't have a fence around them. It's the ocean. So sometimes it's difficult. So to keep well-meaning people well-meaning and not fishing in our MPAs. So that's something that Shark Stewards has worked at for 2 decades almost in creating and supporting marine protected areas, starting here in California with our national marine sanctuaries from the Channel Islands, where I went to school at Santa Barbara, Monterey, the Greater Farallones now because it's been expanded, and the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. And then we also have the Olympic National Marine Sanctuary. So we have 5 national marine sanctuaries off of the west coast of North America here. And those are federally under the National Ocean Service, which is part of NOAA. So that includes our sanctuaries, but it also, we have our marine national monuments, which is a separate regulatory system, but are some of our largest marine protected areas in US waters. So they don't just include the ocean in the case of the National Marine Sanctuary, they also include the Great Lakes, which are fresh, but have a deep historical value from shipwrecks, from natural use, from cultural use. And so these are protected for divers, but also for historians and for archaeological value. But we more typically think of the ones that, like, if you look out here off the Channel Islands, as part of a National Marine Sanctuary. I'm now in Los Angeles with my mother. Finally, during COVID, our families is coming together. We were tested, we're being safe, but it's great that we're opening up, but being safe. But now we get to go dive off of Southern California and look at some of these longer established marine protected areas that we'll talk about more in depth next week, but also in this talk. So that is a combination of a federally protected area with a locally protected area that's salty. So why do we need MPAs? Because fisheries are collapsing globally. At least 80% of the global fisheries are in a state of collapse, near collapse, or over exploitation. Without stopping this pressure, species are going extinct. And a great example is the cod on the East Coast of Newfoundland, Canada, and northern US Atlantic seaboard. We heavily overfished these starting in the late 1800s, where they were fished by schooners. Very difficult to overfish with a small boat when you're doing hand lines, hard work, dangerous work. But after World War II, you see that big spike in the 70s, 80s. It started to collapse, and there was a little bit of a peak, and that fishery has been closed and is now starting to respond after decades of recovery, because these deep sea fish are more like sharks. They have slow onset of reproduction. They have relatively fewer numbers, far more than sharks, but it takes them a long time to recover. So that really important commercial fishery is now in a state of recovery, but without keeping this fishery closed and the area they live in, they will not recover. So we need marine protected areas, because one of the things is that humans don't do well is, especially when there's shared resources, or who knows who owns them, like the high seas, where it's the wild, wild west, got to get a bigger boat to fish the last fish. There is no regulation. We have the law of the sea that the US is actually not even a signatory. We do observe many of the conventions, but there is no true regulation of the open seas. So we're overfishing, especially these large species of fish like swordfish, like tuna, like sharks. So this is called the tragedy of the commons. And we need international agreement and international regulation on our fisheries management, but we also need international agreement on our high seas migratory species agreement. So actually setting aside open ocean marine protected areas, which we haven't really done very well. So there are an army of ships out on the ocean catching tuna, but also swordfish. But more than half of that used to be sharks before shark finning, targeting sharks for their fins. They used to get let go, but also seabirds like albatross, sea turtles, marine mammals are all casualties of this war on fish. So when you open a can of tuna, think about all the other fish that you may be eating, particularly, hello US, bumblebee tuna, which is now owned by a Chinese company or a Taiwanese company that has been associated with shark finning and killing other fish. And so we are actually asking people not to eat bumblebee tuna because it's killing a lot of other fish. So not only do we need to protect their habitat, we need to protect the open waters for these pelagic species. These are not very well regulated. There's a lot of what is called transshipment. There's a lot of bycatch. These ships have way too many hooks. They need to be better regulated. And guess who's regulating them? They're regulated. So over half of these RFMOs, or Regional Fisheries Management Organizations under the United Nations, are represented by tuna industry, or governments like ours in the US who are going pro-fishing, pro-industry, and no conservation. So we're actually combating that, and we'll talk a little bit more about threats not only to our fish species in the Pacific in particular, also the Northeast Atlantic, where monuments are being attacked illegally by the Trump administration. But these methods are extremely harmful, especially bottom trawling, which is prohibited in many marine protected areas like our National Marine Sanctuary. It drags along the bottom, clear-cutting species, catching the species of interest, like flatfish, like bottomfish or halibut, but also many species of rays, many species of sharks, deep sea coral, invertebrates, and it essentially leaves behind a desert. So areas outside of the Gulf or off of Florida, or in areas, for example, off of Malaysia or the Philippines, where these shrimp trawlers are going out, the bottom is now basically sandy. It looks like a desert, and very few species can live there. The shrimp can live there because they're like cockroaches and they reproduce like crazy, but even those shrimp populations are getting seriously impacted. But more importantly, the habitat and the other species are declining because of this indiscriminate method of fishing. So the world's in trouble, especially the big predators like the oceanic white tips, like the blue sharks, this beautiful, beautiful blue shark that swims between Mexico, Central America, all the way up to Alaska, all the way out past Hawaii, passing hundreds of thousands of baited hooks every year. And these fish are suffering because of this targeting for other fish, or sometimes targeting themselves for their fins. So highly migratory species, they have some protection by convention, but in general are not very well protected, which is why some species of sharks, it's estimated, are in decline by over 90%, like oceanic white tips. 20 million blue sharks enter the shark fin trade every year, and those are the ones that are counted, not killed as bycatch. So these most abundant species are now in serious peril and are some of the least abundant large fish in the seas. So that's why we want to protect not only these sharks from fisheries and these fish, but also their habitat, what they eat. There's a clear benefit on a smaller scale to marine protected areas. So this particular example shows the Caribbean protected areas of Glover's Reef of Belize, and off of the Jardines de la Reina off of Cuba. And the green shows the benefit, the increase in fish relative to outside the marine protected areas. So we see in a relatively short time, higher abundance, higher biomass, meaning there's a lot more of the other things, There's an increase in size of the fish relative to outside of the marine protected area. There's an increase in diversity. So meaning we're protecting other species kind of accidentally. We're not really thinking about it. And all these other unseen or unknown sometimes species are also increasing. And we're increasing the targeted biomass, which is benefiting fisheries outside of the marine protected area. For example, like rockfish, which are now recovering off of the coastline where I live, off of the Farallon Islands marine protected areas, and some of the other areas that are being protected. The rockfish are recovering, the lingcod are recovering, and they're going outside of these protected areas where they're benefiting fishermen who are seeing bigger and more abundant fish. Off the Channel Islands of Santa Barbara, we're seeing an increase in 10 years, better biomass, more marketable species, and also more resilience to influences or perturbations like sea surface temperature increase. So we're actually seeing a faster recovery from impacts like climate change, or in the more short term, sea surface temperature. So we actually have better recovery, more species in protected areas than outside, which is one more argument for a marine protected area, as well as a carbon sink. These are sources of blue carbon. So all of that CO2 that's going into the ocean that can come back out can be held and maintained in these living animals and plants. So MPAs are benefiting not only the targeted species, but also the untargeted species. So they're, as well as the industry of diving and fishing. So in the short term off of California, this system of ecosystem-based managed marine protected areas connected by currents is benefiting the species that are taking refuge, hiding in the marine protected area, eating maybe like a shark that migrates. And then if you can make it to the next marine protected area where they're protected, they can eat some more. It's going to benefit them a little bit less than the species that stay hunkered down inside that marine protected area. But those are really benefiting, and they're spawning, and those spawn are going outside, carried by the currents, and protecting and actually seeding areas outside. So this shows that spillover effect where fishermen are actually learning about this, and they're fishing what's called the line. So that dotted line there is the protected area. These big fat fish that are spawning, those juveniles and those larvae are going outside, they're growing, and they're actually maybe even seeding new areas that have been overfished. And those big fat females, or big old fat fecund females, are the ones we really want to protect, especially with the slow growers like groupers, like some of the, like lingcod, like rock cod, and like sharks, because it takes them longer to get reproductively active. And the older they are, the more fat they have. So their babies are healthier, and their babies have a greater opportunity of surviving. Also, for the spawners, like the groupers and the snappers, who actually spawn eggs, and the males spawn milk, and the two meet and become plankton, those are healthier, and they're more abundant. So there is on some order of millions more eggs on a healthier older fish than there are on a younger fish. So protecting these big old fecund females, you're actually generating more fish. And in general, these are also the fish that people want to eat. So keeping these in the protected areas, protecting those big mothers is protecting the areas and benefiting fishermen outside the marine protected area. So we have a long way to go. As we said earlier, there's the Love 3030 campaign. People, we have a long way to go. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but we are naming these hope spots. We are increasing marine protected areas under regulation. There are many areas proposed, at least 10% proposed, but many of these are still paper parks. They need regulation. They need better science. They need more local support. But that is a huge mission. If you want to save sharks, if you want to save fish, if you want to save coral reefs, we need to increase these protected areas. In some cases, these are like our national parks underwater, where there people can go, they can't go camping, but they can go diving, they can take a visit, and they can see the beauty and experience the wonder of nature. And if you don't dive, you can go on a glass bottom boat in Avalon Harbor and see how the MPAs are working, or snorkel, or watch some of the films on our channel or other channels that are exploring and trying to share the beauty of these areas and why we deserve to protect them. I'm looking on my mom's bookshelf here for the Jacques Cousteau series, which she gave me when I was about 9 or 10. I have the whole series somewhere, but those books and later those movies inspired me to become a marine biologist and later on become a filmmaker and documentarian, and also to work with others like Scuba Zoo and SC.TV, where you can see a lot of the work we've done with the Borneo from Below and Timor Leste from Below series, and now with Blue Hope and with Timor Blue with Simon Christopher. And there's Simon. So this week we've been celebrating World Oceans Week. We started June 8th here in Northern California, but it's now a global celebration of the oceans. Earth Day lasts from the 70s, World Ocean Day lasts from 1992, but it's an annual celebration and recognition of the importance of our ocean and how much we love it and why we need to love it more. Go out and hug the ocean. You can hug the ocean as often as you can because it's water and it's safe. So thanks to Simon Christopher, who brought me and Shark Stewards into Southeast Asia. This is now our 8th year. It's actually our 20th year since we started with the California Academy of Sciences in the Philippines with the Reefs to Rainforest Initiative and the Coral Reef Hope Initiative with the California Academy of Sciences. We were there diving and trying to increase protection as well as explore and explain and describe new species. But since then, I was invited to Borneo, to Malaysia. We're working with the Sabah Shark Protection Association to protect some of these areas and increase the model of Sipadan. If you watch the Borneo Shark special with Aaron Birdie Gakowski, who was on last week's show and who is on live on this Blue Hope series with ADEX-Asia and with Simon, describing some of these areas in Sabah that deserve protection, that have high biological diversity and have a lot of human impacts and threats. So there's Birdie. He's a great guy. He's a true champion of wildlife. He's a brave photographer. He's going into these areas, looking at the pet trade now, looking at the wildlife trade like COVID, as these sources of zoonotic diseases that are coming from this wet trade. These sun bears, these pangolin, other wildlife are entering the wet market or the wildlife trade market in China, in other Asian countries. These diseases are transferring across from animals that don't get sick, like bats, to other animals, and then transferring to humans. So Birdie's out there documenting this. We see this from COVID, we see this from SARS, we see this from MERS, that these diseases, these zoonotic diseases, are not only affecting the people who are poaching or the people who are eating, they're affecting the rest of the world. That means that here at home, or in Malaysia, or in Indonesia, or in the Philippines, where these species are being sold by locals and getting entrained in these markets in Asia and other parts of Asia, are affecting all of us across the world. So we're all on this big boat together. We need to start thinking about protecting things at home so it can't fly off on an airplane and get sold and this disease comes back to haunt us. So thanks Birdie, thanks Simon, thanks ADEX, thanks Blue Hope, and thanks Mission Blue and the Association of Tourism Management in Timor-Leste for Hope, for helping us protect the remaining sharks in Timor-Leste and the Coral Triangle and manta rays. We just launched our new website. I'm sporting the new t-shirt with our new logo that includes endangered species, protected under CITES, under the Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species. These are symbols of ocean health. They're also symbols of what is going wrong. They are endangered species, the manta rays, the hammerheads. And they're endangered not because we're eating them, they're endangered because we're killing them for a body part. for manta ray gill rakers for traditional medicine for asthma, for shark fins, for shark fin soup. We don't need these. We can biosynthesize them. We can make them in the laboratory. We can use something that's more sustainable, which is why we're trying to educate people, bring them into the water, connect with nature, love it, and protect it. So that's what Timor Leste is doing. Congratulations, Timor Leste, my friends with the ATM, Atuaro Dive Resort, Timor from Below. Gosh, I can't name you all. Blue Ventures, Dreamers Dive Academy, Reverse Free Diving. I met all these people, including Mario, including all of these great people who we dove with, we worked with to try to come together and have this international recognition of hope for this incredible young nation that has some of the highest biological diversity, and they realize it. And it's up to us to come there, I think, to help and bring some dollars, our diving dollars, to dive these incredible reefs through sound ecotourism and sound management. These are all local marine managed areas that are actually established now under law with the help of Conservation International. And now they need to be monitored. We need better buoys. We need to support more through tourism. If you look, I hiked from the bottom all the way across, went up the north, got to visit some of these villages that really take a long boat ride and are some of the most incredible drop-offs from this coral shelf down into the abyss, where there are all of these migratory species like sperm whales and hammerhead sharks and whale sharks and 26 species of cetacean. So congratulations for this new Hope spot. I hope that you can come here. This shows the MPA. It is local managed. It's supported with the dive resorts. Excuse me, they're going out as scientists, as citizen scientists. We have a shark watch program we started. I dove so hard looking for sharks. Unfortunately, there was a license that was let, and it was also violated. It was poached, and hundreds of thousands, if tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of sharks have been killed from the whole island of Timor, including East Timor. So Indonesia has a lot of pressure, as well as this young nation. We need to protect what's left. So thanks to the divers, thanks to the dive masters like Marty here, and instructors taking me diving, doing some amazing deep dives. I think we had nitrogen pouring out of our bloodstream, but we were careful. We dove like 3 to 5 times a day, really looked hard to document, and this is ongoing through this citizen science database. But inside the MPA, there are big fish, invertebrates, old sea fans, giant sponges, and great young people who are becoming boat guys and hopefully girls eventually. This young man went underwater for the first time. He was so excited. Hopefully he's going to be our next dive master, dive instructor. They're already boat captains or boat repair people helping support these dive services. Beloy here, now with Kevin Austin of ATM, not ATM, I'm sorry, MV Atuaro. That's his boat and his company. But if you want to go whale watching or diving, Kevin took us out on the mainland before we went to Atuaro. We went diving with these young men who are passionate. So rather than fishing for a living and fishing smaller fish and fishing less and working harder, getting less fish, these young men and women perhaps are going to have a future livelihood through supporting tourism and possibly with more education as in science. So there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of work that we need together, including with these young people from China. And we're working, Shark Stewards is working in Shenzhen. We're working in other areas of Southeast Asia to go diving, to go surfing, to bring these young people together to protect their coastlines, like Darcy Liu, who is a champion in China, professional surfer doing beach cleanups, advocating for ocean health in Chinese to Chinese. Like this young diver to the left who has become a scuba diver, who is now proselytizing in China how important it is to go diving. We need to educate, we need to respect each other. This means respect sharks, let's respect each other, and let's respect the ocean. So let's get the young people involved. This is what Sylvia says. Take a young person to the ocean. If you have a kid, take them to the ocean and show them how wonderful it is. And, you know, they'll show you how wonderful it is through their eyes. And if you don't have a kid, borrow a kid. And I build on that. Take a kid's head and stick it underwater. So take a kid diving, teach them how to dive, maybe put a mask on first, but take a kid diving, teach a kid, don't eat shark fin soup, don't eat unsustainable seafood, love it while it's alive, and protect it for all of our sakes. So there's hope for kids. There's hope from kids. Like this is Jack and Simon. Jack helped launch the Blue Hope Initiative. That's blue without an E, bluehope.org, which is really targeting this big issue of plastic pollution in our oceans, which is a huge problem in Asia, but it's also a huge problem here in America, as well as in Europe, in every part of the world. This plastic plague is the COVID of the ocean, and it's coming from all of us. We're sneezing plastic into our waterways at about 10 million tons a year. And guess what? It's going into our plankton, it's going into our fish, and like harvesting wildlife or putting it into the markets, it's coming back to bite us like COVID. So let's reduce plastic, and thanks to champions like Jack Christopher there, like Simon, like Sir David Attenborough, of course, like Dr. Sylvia Earle, who have been champions their whole lives, inspiring young people. Let's get them out. Let's get them to pick up some trash. Let's get them to stop using trash and stop eating unsustainable wildlife, and get in the ocean and love it. Go surfing. And while you're at it, help protect what we've got. So we just heard here in the US that President Trump has met with fishermen in the North Atlantic and has opened up the doors to protect to fishing in the North Atlantic Seamount National Marine Monument. This was established under President Obama to protect not only habitat like deep sea corals that are vanishing from trawlers, from traps, but also to renew the lobster fishery, to help continue the restoration of the cod fishery, and right whales, which are endangered. There's less than 100. So to provide refuges for these animals that are being hounded to death by fishermen. We do not need to fish every square inch of the ocean, President Trump. These are areas that are protected for good reason, because they have good science, and they were legally protected under the Antiquities Act, by executive order. There is nothing that says the executive order can take away. So you can add your voice, tell President Trump no commercial fishing in our marine national monuments. Now with Westpac, which is that regional fisheries management organization I referenced earlier in my talk, they're the tuna managers represented by these large commercial fishing interests, including Taiwan, including Samoa, including America, who are fishing these large tuna fish populations out of the oceans. Also, they're killing hundreds of millions of sharks. They're killing marine mammals. And now they're asking to open up these marine national monuments. The second and third largest marine protected areas on the planet are under siege by this administration. So go to sharkstewards.org, support our lawsuit with Earth Island Institute and the International Marine Mammal Project, where we're going to say, no, this is in violation of the US law. You cannot do this. And these are some of the most beautiful, most protected areas on the planet. I've been there. We've been involved with it with the California Academy of Sciences, with Fish and Wildlife Service at Palmyra, which is part of our Pacific Remote Island Marine National Monument. That's pictured here. Eon Shive, a friend of mine with Tandem Media and Motion, made this incredible film called Hidden Pacific. I encourage you to watch it, and it's at theaters. It's in Planetaria. There's a great short on YouTube. And also we have images for sale that we printed that are going to support this campaign. But you can go online, please add your signature. If you're in the US, tell your senator, We need to support protected areas that are already protected. Remember that blue marble? 70.3% of our ocean is 70.3% of our planet is ocean. The salty part, it really should be called the blue planet. 70.3, there's only 5.3 protected. Now we're looking to take half of that away. This is crazy. We can't let this happen, and we won't let this happen. We want you to go to these areas and go diving, or your kids, and see how beautiful the ocean is when it is protected. So next week, we'll talk about our California marine protected areas and how they're working. There is no argument. I am sorry. The science is there. We have great science, particularly here in California. It's working. We can use this model. There are successful models, especially in New Zealand. But some of these areas aren't working as well, like our Great Barrier Reef. The largest living organism on the planet is gasping. Over half is sick or dead because it's not completely managed, but also because of large sea surface temperature increases are impacting it. So there's a lot we need to do to protect our oceans from within and from without and above. So that's next week. I want to thank you for watching our Ocean Action Live Like a Shark series. Live like a shark. Keep your social distance, but stay together. Keep your fins clean. Always keep smiling, and help us save sharks and critical marine habitat. Donate if you can. I want to thank KPMG that has sponsored us for our beach cleanups, and Beth Wise, our beach cleanup captain, and Diane Walton at the Dolphin Club, and all of our friends who are with Surfrider who are trying to keep the plastic out of the ocean. And of course, our sponsors and our grantors. So if there are comments, I'll try to field them. But in the interim, I'm going to show one final film that was premiered at the Blue Hope, and it's with Sir David Attenborough and Dr. Sylvia Earle. And it gives me hope, it gives me inspiration, but I'll tell you what we need. We need somebody that's 20 years old, that's 25 years old, up here in front of the camera saying the same things that these veterans and champions are saying. So enjoy the film. Thank you to ADEX and bluehope.org, and of course, Dr. Sylvia Earle and Mission Blue.
Hello, my name is David Attenborough, and I'm a naturalist and a natural history filmmaker. Over the last 65 years, I've been very privileged to travel the world and see every environment from the ocean to the jungle. We're now facing a range of extremely challenging environmental problems. But one of the most pressing issues of our times is plastic pollution. While plastic now affects the entire planet, it's our oceans that bear the full brunt of plastic pollution. What's so tragic about plastic pollution is that it is so totally unnecessary. The plastic in our oceans should never have found its way there in the first place. And yet, a staggering 8 million tons of plastic now ends up in our oceans every year, causing untold harm to marine wildlife. Blue Planet 2's crew saw plastic everywhere they filmed, but this catastrophic damage to our oceans is reversible, and nature can recover if we give it a chance. While the actions of just one of us, you, may seem to be so very small with really no effect at all, in fact, knowing there are hundreds of thousands of people all doing the same thing is starting to have a truly positive effect. Every single one of us now needs to think, and I mean really think, about how we use plastic. So, I strongly urge you all to treat plastic with care, because if it reaches the environment, it will stay there for a very long time, if not forever, and ultimately affect us all. Every one of us should be extremely proud of their natural heritage and passionate to protect and conserve it and ensure that it remains around for future generations. We all have a responsibility to care for our planet. The future of humanity, and indeed all life on Earth, now depends on us. Thank you very much, and good luck.
And thank you, Sir David. It's pretty cool to be involved with an initiative with Sir David Attenborough and with Dr. Sylvia Earle. I want to thank Simon Christopher, our partner in Malaysia, and increasingly with Timor Blue in Timor Leste. So this has been our Live Like a Shark Ocean 10. We did have a question. Is there a way to public comment on the Marine National Monument status? Right now, it's the public comment is a petition online. I showed that slide earlier to actually protect or to tell our lawmakers that we are in support of maintaining the status. So there's already been a public comment period where the U.S. public had at least 90 days, probably, no, there are several comment periods where people could comment, including fishing interests, could say, no, we don't want it, we want to fish in there. Industry had their voice, cultural people, native peoples had their voice, the public at large, scientists had their voice, and those were all compiled as we do with our sanctuaries, including the proposed 14th Chumash National Marine Sanctuary off of the Big Sur coastline. You can add your voice during this public comment period, but that has been closed and it went through the process. But in the case also of our monuments, it's done by executive order. So the president actually has the ability, established a long time ago, 1906 by Teddy Roosevelt, to start these monuments, and like Yellowstone and some of our other land monuments. So the public comment period is passed, but you still have voice with your senators and your Congress people, and that's who we send these petitions to. We also call them and we advocate that they ensure that this monument process remains intact and cannot be torn down or reversed from protection by future presidents and the current president. Never before has a president tried to remove a monument or protect its status until now. So that includes the Bears Ears in Utah, which were established and protected and are now being opened up for mining and harvesting of trees. It's going to up the federal court process. We hope it doesn't happen with the oceans. Of course, there are other ways to address that, and that's by voting this fall. So we're trying to protect the existing marine protected areas that we have, as well as establish new ones, particularly in the Coral Triangle, which has 25% of all species on our planet. So that's why it's so encouraging to see these countries, like Timor Leste, like Malaysia, like Indonesia, where we have a conservation center at Lombok with Source, are protecting these areas, or trying to increase protection in areas that are not protected. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on our number 10 Ocean Action series. Not a webinar, not boring. They're exciting, right? Because I always do that. Why is he swimming over here? Look, I'm looking the wrong way. Hey, so live like a shark, stay healthy. Thanks for supporting Shark Stewards. See you next week, where we'll have some special guests talking about marine protected areas in our California state waters. And hopefully we're going to have a little bit of footage that we took this week, because we're going diving. So stay clean, stay healthy, live like a shark, protect our ocean, and see you in a week. Thanks for watching.